everybody, to The Art of It All. I am Stephen Lynerd. It is good to have my very good friend, Chris Greene, in the studio with us today. Thanks for being here, Chris.
No problem. Thank you.
It's an honor to work together with you on this. We've worked together in a couple of different capacities as sidemen. But here we are talking about music and life.
Should be a lot of fun.
Should be a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, long drive out from Evanston.
Pretty much after drop off, after I drop my kid off, I can pretty much do whatever. So,
all right.
So the drive was
all right.
fine.
From one suburb to another suburb. Mm-hmm. So you are, in my opinion, one of the most influential jazz musicians in the scene, in my scene, and that's a personal thing for me. Just as I look out over my scene of people, you blaze paths, unique paths, I think, in unique ways. And I'm not putting you on a pedestal. I'm just sort of setting this interview up.
Well, thank you.
In that capacity, I think it's important for people to understand what it is to face challenges and overcome challenges and have perspective and have leadership and wisdom. And you are someone that I think has faced a lot to get where you are.
I think so. I mean, there's not really a manual as far as like being a jazz musician, say in the current age of technology. I guess you go to music school. I went to music school in the early '90s, and that was kind of like when I guess the big young lions. Everybody was the big young lions were getting all the contracts and everything, and music record labels were really popping. Yeah. And so you go in music school thinking you're going to learn how to play, but you also think like someone's going to hand you a record contract when you graduate.
Yeah.
And you don't realize that the record landscape is changing. The way you promote yourself is changing. Right. Here comes the internet which seems like this weird place, but eventually it's going to be where you sell all your merchandise or promote your gigs or whatever like that.
Yeah.
So just figuring out how to navigate, trying to improve my craft and get the word out about what I do is, it's always, you're always learning something.
Yeah. Let's put the needle all the way back. Give us a little brief overview of the beginning.
Okay.
Of how did you arrive at music? How did you arrive at the saxophone?
Well, I mean, music's always been around. No real musicians in my family other than my grandfather. I think he played bass and sousaphone in high school and just kind of was a hobbyist. But I mean, there was always an appreciation for music in my family. My grandfather on my mother's side was really into blues and like blues and kind of like early R&B ish type stuff like Bill Doggett and that kind of thing. My father's mother was really into like balladeers, like Johnny Mathis. She's a huge Johnny Mathis fan and Barry Manilow and that kind of thing. My mother was, my mother's really big into like Motown stuff, like all the, Temptations are still a favorite group.
So you were surrounded by it.
Yeah, I mean, even just like, card parties or my mother would have like, my mother was an Alpha Kappa Alpha, that was her sorority. And then she kind of, when we moved to Evanston, she hooked up with some ladies that were also in the same sorority but other colleges. And I remember every Thursday they would get together and play bridge at other people's houses. And I just know that when she would host at our apartment or whatever, there was always like, Stylistics being played or just like Philly Soul, that kind of thing, or Temptations or Motown or stuff like that. Yeah. So I was always hearing that. My dad was really big into like disco and.
Did you learn to play bridge?
I did not learn to play. I should have.
Really sort of the void of your childhood.
That is, interestingly enough, like no one ever taught me bridge. Bid whist was the big black people game. Okay. Never learned that. I learned spades when I went to school, but I never.
Wow.
So I guess I need to learn bridge. Yeah, Mom. Why did you teach me how to play bridge?
What a disappointment. Oh. So you're surrounded by music. What was the first instrument you were exposed to?
Well, I mean, pretty much my first instrument was saxophone.
Was it?
And I guess And now thinking about it, maybe I kind of regret not taking piano, but everything happens for a reason. But I mean, I think the first music that I really remember really liking was a neighbor gave me her old copy of what was it? Yeah, Sergeant Pepper, the Beatles, Sergeant Pepper, and I remember liking. I really like the album now. I wasn't sure what to make of it because it was just so unusual, so unlike the music that I'd heard, like say on the radio. And I remember the endings of both albums, or the endings of both sides of the albums, scared the heck out of me. Like the ending of what's the one? Well, A Day in the Life with the piano chord, that scared me. I think is it Benefit of Mr. Kite is the end of side one with the carousel that goes out of control.
Crazy.
That like
there was no drug use involved in any way, shape, or form.
Well, no. But at 4 or 5, when I heard that, I'm like,
seriously, yeah.
But just that kind of thing stay with me. But and then like seeing like early videos of like Stevie Wonder on Sesame Street playing playing Superstition.
Oh yeah.
That kind of thing. That kind of thing stayed with me. But anyway, as far as my own instrument or saxophone, which I'm not entirely sure why I picked. I liked because up until that time I really there wasn't a lot of jazz played in the house. I mean, my dad had some like soul jazz albums like some Lou Donaldson stuff and everything, but not an extensive jazz collection. So I played saxophone. I think I just picked it because it looked like a really cool instrument.
Alto?
Yeah. Everybody kind of starts on alto. Yep. I picked it because it looked like a real cool instrument. I knew at the very least that even though I didn't know a lot about jazz or much about saxophone or even like the mechanics of music or anything like that, I knew that there were saxophone solos on everything. Most pop songs, most R&B songs. Yeah. So at the very least, I could hear somebody playing my instrument.
Right.
I could turn on the radio back then and hear somebody playing the instrument that I chose. So.
Absolutely. So, middle school, elementary school, you're in the band. Mm-hmm. Did you march? Were you in a marching band? Did you have to do the marching scene?
Did the marching thing in high school. Okay. But as far as grade school, like my last year of grade school is when I started playing at 10. I went to middle school, played in the concert band.
Okay. Were you good?
I was decent. Surprisingly, I mean, I guess you're middle school. You can't really call yourself good.
Yeah.
I was good. I reasonably. I knew how to put the saxophone together.
Sure.
And I could put it together reasonably quickly. And I sounded okay enough for my band director at the time to at least put me towards the front and put me towards the front of the section.
There you go.
And interestingly enough, because I just thought I was a kid, doing something that I like to do.
Yeah.
My band director at the time, I guess now looking back, he must have really seen something in me because I remember I wanted to join jazz band, but I didn't really I didn't really think about it until later. But somehow he knew, I think he must have picked up that I was somewhat good. And so he didn't put me as a lead alto, but he did put me on Barry, just because he knew we had about 2 or 3 alto players, and so he didn't really need any more. But he knew that he wanted to keep me around, so he put me on Barry. And just again, just thinking back, it's just like how did you know, or how did he know?
Yeah.
How did he know back then that I would be, have some degree of talent or want to stick with it or whatever? So
it's the power of an educator, right?
Yeah,
it's the power of an educator. I can look back at certain music educators in my life, and I pinpoint sort of key moments, and it's like, why would they have made that choice?
Right,
it's because
exactly.
They care and they're smart, and this is why they do what they do. And sometimes it's happenstance,
right?
But,
and I guess they've been at it a while, and they can spot certain things that whatever. But it's just funny that out of all the kids playing saxophone, there were a handful that my band director back then were like, okay, I want you to play a solo I want you to play a solo on this song during jazz band, or I want you to play, for the solo contest, you got a good rating or whatever. I want you to play that for your, when you're 8th grade or whatever. I want you to play that at the spring concert or whatever. So little things like that I guess looking back, like I'm just thinking like, oh cool, now I get to play and I get to play in front of people. He's thinking, okay, let me really encourage this kid who probably doesn't realize that he's halfway decent and should be playing in front of people. Let me encourage him, and so maybe he'll get used to it. Maybe he'll want to do more and more and more, and maybe he'll pick up the ball on his own.
Yeah.
So
this is what you do for a living.
Yes.
There had to have been a moment where you realized, as you're coming up, this is what I have to pursue. This I have to do this. I don't want to be a librarian.
Right.
I don't want to be a chemist.
Right.
I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. I sure as heck don't want to be a dentist.
Right.
When was that moment? Do you remember when that moment was, or the time in your life when that moment was?
It's kind of a few moments. Like again, if you play saxophone, you're any halfway decent, you're more or less like encouraged to play jazz band. So you play. I played in middle school, liked it, kept playing in high school. Again, I didn't really have much in the way of skills, and certainly I didn't have a lot in the way of like jazz vocabulary.
Okay.
But I think I had a lot more nerve than anything else, and so I would get up, whenever I would want a solo, like I would, do you want a solo? Sure. Like, now granted, it was just blues warmed over blues licks.
Yeah.
The same warmed over blues licks, no matter what the chord changes
you were doing
it. But I just had the nerve to do it, and so like, again, looking back on one of those weird moments, the orchestra director of our high school, who was also the music theory teacher, he grabs me at the end of my sophomore year and is like, "You're going to take my materials and music class." I'm like, what? Yeah, like I guess this was after probably during one of the spring concerts or whatever. He's like, "You're going to take my class, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." He's been bugging me for a while. "You're going to take my materials and music class, aren't you?" "Yeah, whatever." Yeah. Finally, he just like pulls me in his office, signs this thing. "Here, take this to the registration. You're going to take my class next year."
Wow.
I'm like, "All right, whatever, fine, whatever, thank you." All right, so this fulfills a requirement, right?
Sure.
Yeah, this knocks out one of my art requirements, right? All right, whatever.
Right.
Cool.
Exactly.
That's fine. So then you take it, and then you take the class, and it's basically getting under the. I didn't know anything about music theory, so it's like I didn't even know there was such a thing as music theory. Music, as far as I knew, was just like
the notes on the page,
making sure you sound good, making sure you blend with the people around you. This is like getting under the hood and figuring out how everything works, and this is a classical piece. This is we're going to drop the needle, and you're going to tell me about this piece of music, or we're going to look at scores, or reductions of scores, and try and figure out what's going on, and what's
this is high school.
Yeah, this is the high school, the high school program, and we're trying to figure out like, what's the progression here, and what's the what's the chord, and just and then it's just like then you go back to band, it's like, oh, okay, so that's how all this stuff works, and that's how it all fits together, and so that's going on, and then again I'm like, don't know again. Jazz at the time for me was old man's music. It was some of it I liked at the time. The Duke Ellington guy wrote some pretty nice stuff.
Couple 2 Street things.
Couple. Again, my vantage point was Public Enemy and MC Hammer at the time. So
it's not a bad vantage point.
But that's jazz at the time for me was old man music, and I knew Take the A Train. Yep. I knew Herbie Hancock. I knew he wrote both Rocket and Chameleon. Didn't know anything about anything else before, but I was like, no, those are pretty cool. And then I think my dad actually had one Coltrane record. Interestingly enough, it's still to this day my least favorite Coltrane record. It's Om. Have you ever hip to it?
I'm not hip to it.
It's smack dab in the middle of like the out period.
Okay.
Which is interesting enough. Like I've really grown to appreciate that period, like interstellar space and stellar regions, and Wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Ohm is just, it's a pile of hot garbage. I'm sorry to any Coltrane fans. I love every other Coltrane album except for that one.
It's
just,
okay.
There's like 5 minutes of chanting, and then like it's just bedlam. It's noise that fades out, and then you flip it over, and it fades back in, and the same thing. Some people like it.
So you haven't done a lot of transcribing off,
right? Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that album, that was my frame of reference for Coltrane. So I'm like, so it's just like, so my band director my junior year was like, check out some Coltrane. Like, I already have. I have a Coltrane album home. That's all I need to hear. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Have you heard Blue Train?
Right.
No, I'll grab it from the library. Okay, I'll tell you what. Check out Kind of Blue. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I take that back. I'm sorry. He said go to the library tonight and check out My Favorite Things. Okay, sure. No problem. Grab the vinyl, put it on, blew me away. I'm like, okay, it's some crazy stuff with the soprano stuff, but it's a steady bass line, which is pretty akin to the music that I was already listening to.
Yeah.
It's really cool stuff. This really high, like stuff that I couldn't necessarily, I certainly didn't know exactly what he's doing, but it was like, okay, that's something that I can aspire to,
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, so this Coltrane guy, clearly he went crazy when he made this Ohm album, but this is actually really cool.
Right.
Who else does this guy play with? And then it was like, he played on some album called Kind of Blue. And I'm like, I went back to my band director and was like, what do you know about this Kind of Blue album? He's like, finally. Okay.
Young Padawan.
Go get that album. And so then once I got that album, it's like that, and then, you start checking out all the people, 6 Degrees of Separation.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, you're off and running. Okay. So then I'm like, okay, somehow, some way I want music, I want to be involved. Maybe I'll just play on the weekends. Maybe I'll just be a weekend warrior, but I'll keep playing. Maybe I'll join a band or something.
Right.
Join a band or something at school. So then, I joined. So with all this going on, like the summer before my junior year, I joined. In addition to I decide I want to play a little more. Then this opportunity comes up where I get to be in the pit orchestra for our school variety show called Yamo at Evanston Township, and it was kind of a cool experience because just I'd met most of the people were either band people or orchestra people, so you got to see them anyway, but you got to do something together outside of like the traditional band stuff, and so that was cool and just hanging out with them. But me and the trumpet player, my best friend Dempsey, we each got a solo on the entr'acte to announce the second act. It was like an 8-bar solo, and again, wasn't really doing much as far as like vocabulary or whatever. But I played my little 8-bar solo every single night. Like the first night I played, people were like, "Yeah," like cheering really loudly, and I'm like, "Oh, is that okay?" So I again, pretty much played the same lick all 8 performances of the show.
Hey.
But every time I did that, it was like, yeah. I'm like, really? Huh. I'm up here just kind of BSing.
And they're liking it.
They're liking that? So maybe I could do this more? Yeah. Maybe I could do this as a living?
Absolutely.
Huh. And so once again, weird preordained path. My mother is both my parents went to Indiana University.
Okay.
And they were both like, I think from birth they tried to brainwash me to go there. Like, you need to go there. That's where we went. Blah blah blah. So when I started researching music schools, turns out
they have one. Actually.
Yeah, they have at the time, and it's still one of the best ones.
Yes.
But at the time, it was the best one, and they were like, "Oh, how does that work out?" So I went, and there you go. And so that's kind of how it all. You asked for summary. I'm sorry, it wasn't really a summary, but that's pretty much how it all kind of fit together and set me off and running. So,
was it during college that you knew you wanted to be a band leader, or did being a band leader take shape later on?
Oh wow, I knew. Yeah, I didn't really start leading bands till I got back to Chicago.
Okay.
But yeah, I knew. I mean, I started like writing music.
Okay.
Like, and I knew there were some guys from high school that I knew I would play a gig I play like some summer outdoor things back in Evanston.
Yeah.
And I remember that band was kind of a no real leader of the band, but I knew someday I would eventually lead a band, but I wasn't sure when it would happen, and I guess when I started leading a band, it was almost like a kind of an outgrowth of that band.
Okay.
That band kind of ended, and I kind of took the reins and started like booking gigs at cafes and stuff. But again, it was just I never really thought about being a band leader. I just knew I had some music or some ideas that I wanted to try to play out in front of, I wanted to try to play them in front of an audience. And, I guess never really look back, I guess.
Yeah. You have a highly successful quartet, Chris Greene Quartet.
Yes.
One of the unique things about this group, and I think that separates you guys from other groups, is you rarely play with mixed personnel. Yeah. It happens. Yeah. But I know that you work very hard to have the core group.
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that?
For a number of reasons. Excuse me. It's important. I think if people are certainly from the showbiz aspect, if people are good enough to follow you and follow what you're doing and join your email list or whatever, purchase your albums, and then come see you. The least that you can do is come with a cohesive band. Yep. If not well rehearsed, then at least or if not the same personnel, then at least well rehearsed.
Right.
Oftentimes I would go see some of my favorite players long before I started the quartet, and they would have like killer bands, like top name people and people, the top name instrumentalists, but everyone's kind of like buried, got their heads buried in the charts. And certainly, if you're playing a hard piece of music, certainly you'll right. just to make sure that you're in the right spot or whatever, or make sure you hit the right transition or whatever. Yeah. Certainly, but we all come up seeing our greatest heroes playing as much off the page as they can. Yeah. I mean, shoot, actually, I just recently for my birthday, I treated myself to the Frank Zappa Roxy DVD. Whoa. I'd had the album for years, but I think they just re-released the film, restored the film or whatever, and it just blew me away, like seeing them live, and they're playing some really intricate hip stuff. Yeah. Nobody's missing anything, and no one's looking at any music. Yeah. And it's just amazing, like all the transitions, all the time shifts, all these crazy harmonies, all these really weird breakdowns, and nobody's at any point looking at a piece of music. And so I just wanted to have something where like people are the audience is experiencing with us. We're making the music and having a good time, and but they're off stage, and they may or may not know about the mechanics of music, but they're still like, wow, they're good, or they're having a good time, or they're really vibing off of each other, and I'm interested in what they're doing. So,
as you look back on band leaders for whom you have worked, when you have been called to be a sideman, do you think a lot about what you bring and what you don't bring to your own leadership of your group? Does your previous world, not your previous world, but the people you've worked with, can you look back and pinpoint things that you really wanted to emulate and things you said, I will never do that if I'm a band leader?
Yeah, you learn things about just being a sideman, and not even just a jazz sideman, but just in rock bands that I work with. There are things that I've toured with this Dave Matthews cover band for 5 or 6 years.
I've seen old footage.
Yes.
I was good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and there were a few things that I didn't like, but there were the guy ran he was probably the first band that I was involved with where the guy actually ran his band like a business, and as much as you and I have talked about this. It's those things that you don't want to think about. Yeah. Those things that that almost seem opposite of creativity and making music, but it's those things that he would do that made it easy for us to function, and made it mostly easy for us to do what we needed to do. And those are the kinds of things that I try to, and from different band leaders that I work with, but those are the kinds of things I try to put in place with my band, because I want my guys to be, I want them to feel creative. I want them to feel needed. I want them to feel necessary, valued. Granted, it's my band. It's my name on my name.
Yep.
The thing lives or dies with whatever with me.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I couldn't do any of this without them, and they know that. I think I want them to feel valued, and so I think that's it's an important thing. So those are the kinds of things. And then there are situations where the opposite, where you'll work with somebody and it's like, all right, that's not how I would have handled that situation. Yep. That's not how. And certainly, even just from my very first attempts at leading a band in the mid '90s, like, I was admittedly not an easy person to work with.
Okay.
In fact, like, I literally, actually, funny, a couple of days, I actually apologized to one of my old sidemen. Like, I'm sorry, I was just not. I was trying to figure this stuff out.
It's a blind spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to figure this stuff. I'm working stuff, and we're working, but I'm trying to, get everybody on the same page. And like, when you're mid-20s, your communication skills are pretty lousy anyway.
And you think you know everything.
And you're just trying to, explain to certain people, this is what you want, but I hear it differently, and or maybe, musically they can't get to where you would like to get to them, so you have to find that midpoint. Now I'm a lot better at, like, how do you hear this thing, or maybe you hear something better. Whereas, like, maybe in my mid-20s or whatever, it's like, you have to play it this way, and it's like, you have to. That's not how it works, and that's not how Monk or Mingus or Zappa or Prince were able to keep their bands together for so long. There has to be, like, this is what I'm hearing, but how would you interpret this? And, like, maybe this isn't exactly the way I would like you to hear it, but let's try to meet somewhere in the middle.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So, as a band leader, but also someone who freelances in other groups, when you get a call for work, does it cross your mind whether to say yes or no if the freelance work supports your main gig or contrasts it? Like, if I know you play in Midnight Sun,
right?
But you might also get called to play a jobbing gig, right, or a society gig, or like standards for an evening. Do you gravitate towards one as a challenge, or do you gravitate towards one because, that's my tone right now, that's the equipment I'm working with lately, so it makes sense to do that?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I try to live my musical life mostly by this philosophy, and, like, there's like, how can I put this? I try to live it by this philosophy. Like, I'll ask questions about the gig. Like, I need to try to assess a few things about the gig. Will this gig pay pretty well? Will it enhance my career in some way? Is it going to be a fun time with good people? Will it make me a better musician? And the fifth question will be, would I rather be Ubering?
That's fantastic.
Would I rather be Ubering? If this gig can satisfy 2 or 3 of the criteria, then we're good.
Okay.
Because there've been gigs that pay really, really well.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe the vibe, or maybe it's like, most jobbing leaders are that I've worked with are okay. Mm-hmm. There have been a couple where even their business infrastructure has been really, really off. Or there was a gig that I don't necessarily like to talk about, but there was this gig that I was doing where it was with this DJ company where I would basically play my saxophone along with a DJ, which I've done before, which I don't mind. If it's like house thing and he's doing like instrumental tracks, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But this was just like playing with straight up like top 40 stuff. And then he was like, okay, if I can just stand off of the stage or whatever, that's fine. No, I want you to walk around and dance with the people.
Oh, no.
I'm like, and I did it a couple times, and I'm just like, this sucks. Like, no, I don't like this. And then on top, this speaking of stuff that I should probably professional stuff that I should probably say. But no, but then on top of that, it was just like you got paid, but then it was like this weird like cycle where you'd have to wait like an extra week, and I'm like, dang, I'm pouring myself out, and I gotta wait to get paid. Oh man, so yeah, if it comes down like, because I like doing a bunch of different things. I like doing Midnight Sun. I like playing standards. I like playing my stuff with my band where we mix up standards and play other stuff. I mean, I like playing with Jay Davis Trio, all the people that I've, and then you get those high profile calls, which are fun and on a different level. So I like playing different kinds of stuff. The genre doesn't matter. The style doesn't matter. I mean, I listen to all saxophone players from Coltrane to what's my man that played with Spring? Clarence Clemens. So like and everybody in between. So it just, the style doesn't matter as long as it's going to be fun, as long as I learn something, as long as I take something, as long as I take something away from it, And even the gigs that don't necessarily pay very well, but the hang is fun. I learn something musically. I meet a musician that I've never met before, or I get to collaborate with a musician that we've only been talking via Facebook or something like that, but we finally get to meet face by face and make some music together. Absolutely. And then man, I'll keep you in mind if I ever need a sub from my band, I'll call you or something like that.
I got this DJ gig I need to get you
on. Right, exactly. I got this DJ gig that I'm playing.
You'd be perfect for it.
So, style and all that other stuff, it doesn't matter, because if I'm so concerned about the integrity of like keeping my jazz chops or whatever, like I might as well only play jazz. But then I play a lot of jazz, but I don't want to just play jazz. Yeah. So it's just important to me. And had I been thinking like I just want to play jazz, I probably would have never met the guys in Midnight Sun.
Right.
So I just like playing music, but it's got to be something where there's got to be something that I get out of it. Money is great. What else is there? Is it going to be a fun gig with cool people? Am I going to learn something? Is it going to advance my career some way? So that's how I try to structure everything.
So here's a relatively broad yet narrow question in its own way. You have an extensive discography. Extensive. Okay. I would say extensive. Okay. Right? A lot of your own original music. Yeah. And some things. Pop tunes that you've redone, standards that you've redone. Sort of a desert island question here.
Ooh, okay.
Think through your whole discography. If you had one album that was like, ooh, if your hearse could pull a U-Haul, I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it with me.
Okay.
What would and you're not going to offend anyone or anything like that, or leave anyone out. But like, if there was a desert island album that you've recorded, what would it be?
Well, shoot. Part of me wants to give that Duke Ellington answer to say that I haven't recorded it yet.
Mm-hmm. A previous guest has already taken that, so you can't.
So I can't steal that one.
No.
I don't know. I liked. I don't know. Like, I will say the last two albums that I've recorded, both Boundary Issues and Play Space. Yeah. Those are probably the first two albums. And certain, I would say even parts of
Music Appreciation. Look at me knowing your album.
Yeah, you do. Right, exactly. I don't even know. No, I would say that those three albums are probably the first that you can play in my presence where I don't immediately I don't immediately start running into music nerd mode. Like, I could have done that better, because I'm usually the worst person to listen to my own music with. Yeah. But I'll say Play Space. I'll say Play Space because it's kind of, there's no real lofty statement. I usually try to make an album and then, encapsulate it with whatever it is I'm feeling, some kind of clever pun to kind of encapsulate what I'm thinking about music in my life at the time. But that album was just kind of like a goof. It was, we got a recording of the night, and I was just gonna like probably use it as a demo or upload it to, maybe give it away as a freebie to fans or whatever. And it just ended up like, wow, this is a really great night. It was a great night, and we were on fire, and the audience was really into it, and maybe people need to hear it. And so it was probably the most relatively unpretentious album that we put out, where there's no kind of like lofty goal other than like, here's what we do live.
Were there tracks you did on that album that you've recorded on other albums?
Yes. For the most part, it's all stuff that we recorded before.
Okay.
Actually, it's all stuff that we recorded before. And so I usually joke with people like, if you're trying to decide which to buy between, like, say, Boundary Issues and Play Space, you should probably buy both. Because what you can do is you can, have your friends over and have some cake and ice cream or something. Some scotch and play both versions of Blues for Dr. Fear back to back. Then you can come out with a little, you guys can discuss, this is what he did.
Cards.
This is what he did in this solo, and this is what he did in this solo.
And how many people have written to you and say that they've done this?
No one, unfortunately. Okay. No one, unfortunately. I've even gone so far as to say, if you have this party, I will Skype. I will come in. If I'm around, I'll come to your party. If I'm not, I'll come in and Skype or FaceTime, and we can talk. I can discuss. But no one's taking me up on that.
Man, I'll see if I can. Maybe I can put something together.
Okay.
Maybe I can put something.
No one's taking me up on that.
We'll zoom in a little further and talk about if there's one tune in your entire world that you could take with you that you would say to people, either that you would say to people, "Hey, this is me," or that you would say, just overall, I'm really proud of everything about this tune.
Wow. That's a good one. I don't know. Maybe. Oh, wow. Good one. Here to Help, maybe? Okay. At least that's how I'm feeling today.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow I might feel like crossover appeal, but maybe Here to Help, just because, it was one of those things that on paper shouldn't work. Like a futuristic kind of Eddie Harris groove with a deep house section that kind of seemingly comes out of nowhere, that probably shouldn't work. And even when I brought it into the guys, I remember, when I brought that song to the guys, I think everybody was just going to solo on the 5/4 Eddie Harris groove. I was going to take a solo on that, but I think I get these ideas from, I get these weird ideas, and I think I was walking through the mall and like some kind of deep house song was coming on, and it was like, hey, why can't I solo over it? Why can't I just? Well, how are you gonna do it? I'm gonna just fade out on this thing and fade into the thing. That's probably not gonna work. Probably not. Yeah. But I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
And it ended up working. So yeah, I think I would say that one.
When you bring a tune to the guys, do you bring it complete? Hey, this is what I want. This is the groove. This is the comping pattern. This is the bass line. This is the drum groove. Do it.
Mostly.
Okay.
Mostly. But the great thing about working with those guys is they're so creative, and it's like the vast majority of and I always joke about this, like Mark is great about coming up with endings, because I can write songs pretty well, but I can never really come up with interesting ways to end them. And he's great about, like, what if we did this? And like Steve, for instance, like, okay, this is the idea I was thinking was this beat mixed with that. Mixed with that, and then he'll interpret it, and great, and Damien's just great harmonically anyway. So this is I'll give him a chord progression, but he might make little notes and change. Okay, well, what if I inverted it this way, or what if I did this as a passing chord, or what if I did that? So there's room in there.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of from the, Duke Ellington school, which is like you write the song, but then you kind of give them room to find their roles. It's a you kind of give them room to find their place in the music.
Has there ever been a tune where, not militaristically, but you said, this is just what I want.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, and even for the tunes that even they've written, it's like, everybody's flexible to a point, but then if it's like, what if we did that? It's like, no, that part needs to be there because this is the whole hook, or this is the whole structure of the song, or whatever. Every once in a while. But I try not to, I try not to be, I try not to let my ego get in the way of like what can make the song the best, because sometimes Damien might have a truly better chordal idea, or even like my song Future Emperor of Evanston. I originally wrote it to try to be like it was almost going to sound like Footprints, like the original Wayne Shorter Footprints was the original bass line I had in mind for it, and it just wasn't really working with the melody. And so I think I might have just asked Mark, hey, like, I don't know, what I have in mind isn't working. What do you think? And what he ended up playing was the bass line that's now like
great.
Works for it.
That's a great tune. That tune is actually often stuck in my head randomly.
No, thank you.
There are two tunes of yours that just sort of randomly get stuck in my head for no reason at all.
Okay.
But I find myself in consistent situations. So when I'm rushing around, it's Future Emperor of Evanston.
Okay.
When I'm stuck in traffic, it's Bride.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't know why. I think it's because like I'm either hitting the steering wheel in frustration and suddenly I find myself, and then it's just
that's awesome.
Then I'll pull it up on Amazon or the music on the phone. But like there are tunes that you do that sort of they're infectious in a good way.
Thank you.
I think, and that says a lot.
Thank you.
So let's shift into a question that is hard to ask and answer without feeling egotistical about ourselves. But I want you to think about it for those who are watching, who are aspiring to be leaders or band leaders or professional musicians. This is sort of geared for them.
Okay.
The way I phrase it is, what is your unfair advantage?
Oh, wow.
What is your, when someone's like, what's the problem musically that you can solve that people should say, oh, we have this need, call Chris Greene? Or as a band leader, what sets you apart from other band leaders? Not that you're putting them down.
Okay.
But not like, oh, I do this so much better than that guy, you should never do that. No, what is something about you as a player and as a leader that is different?
That's a good question. Well, I'll tell you, I'll start with the leader first. Maybe as a leader, that's a good one. Okay, let me ask you. Band leader, or like band leader / business person. I hate saying that, but band leader, business person.
Band leader.
Okay, good enough. I guess it's both the same. I guess I'm pretty shameless.
Yeah.
When it comes to trying to get my message across.
Yeah.
But I also try to temper it with like a good self-deprecating sense of humor.
Okay.
So it's like, I'm an artist and forging ahead and blazing trails and trying to be uncompromising and all that other stuff, but at the same time I want to have fun, and I take what I do seriously, but I don't take myself seriously. So, and because of that, I think people see like people who might even think like I don't like jazz or whatever, like I don't necessarily like jazz or the stuff I've heard, but this guy's nuts. He seems like he's having a good time. Like, why am I drawn to that? And so those are the kind of people I like.
Yeah.
me personally, as far as my own playing, I think my secret advantage is that like there are great musicians in this town that play a bunch of stuff, but I wonder if I think they maybe too often worry. Oh man, you might have to edit this just because I'm trying to think about this.
I like people to see the thought process. So
that's a good question.
And it's hard to answer without sounding egotistical. I want you to just feel free to answer it. Just,
I think. Well, I okay. My secret weapon is that I'm unapologetically unapologetically like the funk. I think.
Yeah.
I think that's.
I like that.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think people may be afraid to let any kind of pop influence into their conception.
Yep.
Or maybe not everybody. Like somebody like Bobby Broom is great at it. Like you're really good at it. I'm trying to think. Like Michelle Thomas is really good at it. But I think there's this thing where if you play serious music, jazz, whatever, there shouldn't be like. Man, I'm trying to. It's a really good question. I guess I'm just unapologetic about how much I like funk, or how much I want to draw upon it. Like it's never been a thing to me to like actively fuse stuff together. I'm just really just kind of like using everything that I've used, or everything that I've learned as a musician, or everything that I listen to as a person here on Earth, just for my conception, my whatever. And I just that's what I'm always. It's what I'm drawn to. It's some of the first music that I heard growing up, and it's something where I feel comfortable. I mean, I feel comfortable. I can play standards all night. I can do that, but it's part of my genetic makeup.
It takes me back to what you said earlier when you heard My Favorite Things, or you heard Kind of Blue, because a sentence you said earlier was, yeah, there was some out stuff, but there was a constant bass line, and I was used to that in the music I was listening to. And that has stuck with me all the way to this moment. Right. And I kind of had a feeling it would come to this, because I think that's critical. Yeah. I think your desire to fuse the funk and the pop into what you're doing, I mean, that's our whole mission, right? Get someone who otherwise would have no interest or desire to come to a jazz club or to come here. Maybe they're out to hear your show because their friend said, "Hey, come out with me on Friday night. I want to go to Space and hear this band that I really like." Right. Okay, fine, I'll go with you. Right. They're thinking it's going to be ding, 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 right. ding, ding, smoky, weird notes, a gajillion notes so that they can't go out humming. Right. And then they hear a groove. They hear a bass line. They hear tonality. They hear a phenomenal sound from a horn and a melody line that they go home and they're like, you know what I mean? And the case in point. So I think what you're doing is you're fusing elements that people go, oh, that's recognizable. Yeah. The song isn't, but the feel of the groove, the feel-good nature of it. And
it should even like jazz at its craziest, it should evoke something. There should be something, right. I mean, on one hand, like, again, want to charge ahead and, do what I want to do. But on the other hand, like, I'm not, in some way, I'm reinventing the wheel, but in a lot of ways I'm not. So, so I wouldn't play the way I played without having listening. I wouldn't do things I currently do without listening to a lot of Prince, but I certainly wouldn't do the things I do had I not listened to a lot of Sonny Rollins or Hank Mobley. Correct. So you should be able to hear, in some way you should, even if you can't necessarily hear that, if I had never listened to any of that stuff, what I would be doing would sound a lot different and probably wouldn't be any good. Yeah. But it should definitely evoke something. And even like to your point, as far as like somebody who doesn't know anything. I mean, a lot the reality is that the majority of the people who come see us do what we do aren't musicians. Musicians are going to be working or maybe spending time with their significant other.
Right.
They're just recuperating after working or whatever.
Right.
So the majority of the people who are going to come see us are non-musicians or people who maybe have 2 or 3 jazz albums,
right.
Or whatever. And, or maybe just want to go out and have a few drinks and have a good time. So there should be something in what we do for, the guy or lady at home that has 12,000 jazz albums or 2. There should be something in there for that person. And something in there musically, the groove, some melody, or even just the collective vibe on stage. It's not what they see is not just 4 people starting and stopping a song at the time. They're seeing, me give cues, cues into certain sections or transitions, or us really, playing together. Playing together as hard as any rock band,
right.
And I think people respond to that stuff.
Oh, they do. I mean, the group I toured with, King's Brass, he's been touring for over 40 years doing this. And exactly what you just said. When he said, I started this group, I wanted my Peabody Conservatory trumpet friends to come out and see our show and be like, wow, you guys have some serious chops and endurance. This is amazing. I wanted some non-musical people to come to my show and be highly entertained.
Right.
I wanted kids to come to my show and not be bored.
Right.
I wanted an old person to come and not feel assaulted.
Right.
I wanted a young person to come and not feel, and I wanted the young person to come and feel connected.
Right.
So it's something for everyone without selling out.
Right.
Exactly. You're providing a service. I mean, when you walk into a store to buy something, the ambiance of the store has a great effect on how long you're going to spend in there, whether or not you're going to buy a product.
Right.
And it's all about that moment in time. And I think as band leaders, that's one of the things we're constantly thinking about.
Absolutely. 3
last questions. And the one is directly springboarded off of that. When you're playing live, and a lot of us have felt this feeling where you kind of see the room slipping away a little bit. Mm-hmm. Either we've gotten into our own world, we're playing 18 minutes into a tune, and it probably should have been 8.
Right.
But it's feeling good to us, but you look out there and you kind of see people begin to talk to their friends, or,
right.
Not only are they talking to the bass solo, they're actually leaving during the bass solo.
Right.
What do you do? Do you adjust what you're playing in that moment? Do you rethink the set list? Do you change what you're doing to get the room back? Or are you someone who's I'm going to stick to my guns in this, and we're going to present this no matter what?
Wow. I guess it depends on how I'm feeling. Usually, let's say I would say more often than not, if we're playing like a restaurant, or we're playing, say, like for instance, no shade, Andy's is wonderful.
Yeah.
But Andy's is a restaurant.
It's a restaurant.
It's a restaurant as well as a jazz club, but it's also a downtown, sometimes tourist hang.
Right.
So depending on, say, who you get in there, sometimes they're like really fired up, and sometimes you get an audience that's like done their homework and like, who's playing there, and like, oh man, I read your bio and blah blah blah, and then sometimes you just get a bunch of people who are just there just to have a good time. So what do you do? And then there have been nights where we had a residency there, but there were nights where we've been perfectly in sync, and everything we've done has just
turned to gold.
Has just been like, we can get away with some crazy, like some of our crazier stuff, or we get away with some of our groovier stuff, and they vibe with it all. And then there are times where I'm like, all right, I'm feeling like, I want to start mellow, and then like it'll just like, oh, they're going mellow. Oh, cute, cute, and the talking will go up here, like, so. What do you do? Couple things. I mean, one thing, certainly talk to the audience for one thing. Yeah. I mean, talking and relating go a long way. Yeah. Even if you don't necessarily aren't successful, and like hey folks, how's everybody doing, and blah blah blah, and this is the band, and or make some funny joke. That at least goes a long way. Like we're not just four guys on stage, just like
play, check, please, go home.
Right, yeah, exactly. We're at least trying to make the attempt. So sometimes that goes a long way. Sometimes you have to ramp up, like, play something that matches their intensity, like play one of our maybe harder ed songs. So maybe something that features a drum solo. Like usually, drum solo will get everybody's attention, especially
a Steve Corley drum solo.
Steve Corley drum solo, because it's never, he can go from like bombastic and then bring it right back down to like where you're on the edge of your seat, like what's he doing? And so that he's definitely my secret weapon in a lot of ways.
Yeah. He's got a good haircut too.
Yes,
he's a visual guy too.
Haircut.
I mean, it's perfect. Steve, it's perfectly symmetrical.
Haircut, his beard game is always
it's
tight.
Always on point. Always on point.
Always on point.
Some Steve love.
Yeah, but that's a tough. It just kind of depends. But then you'll hear like, it's funny. I was thinking about like I was listening to some long ago interview with the great Patrice O'Neill, the great comedian, and he said something to the effect of like, when if you're a comedian and you're bombing, like never try to win them back. Like I try to, like he said, like try to chase them out the door, if you will. And and he said, interesting enough, they never leave. Like if I try to be as like, if I try to match, so maybe that's kind of like match their energy with with an aggressive song. Maybe not like try to earnestly win them back, but like just maybe, I don't know. I mean, I've given you about 3 different answers.
No, it's all good.
But I guess it's just maybe just ultimately maybe do what I try to do what I feel. Mm-hmm. But I think that, I think it just kind of depends on the situation. I think most of the time I'll try to match with a funkier song or more aggressive song. But I think I think the Patrice thing. If you stay on the path and just keep doing what you're doing, maybe they'll come around. Yeah. Or worst case scenario, you'll get them next time. You get them next time. You get them next time.
Second to last question. If you could go back and encounter the younger Chris Greene in school, on the street, at the time in his life when he's on the cusp of, I'm going to be a musician, what are a couple of short words of encouragement or advice that you would go back, having gone through everything you've gone through, the problems you've had to solve, the adversity you've had to face, the successes, the failures, the good decisions, the bad decisions. Right. If you had like a minute with him, what would you say to him?
Well, I mean, probably maybe be a little more. Well, first of all, probably maybe be a little more consistent with your practice. Mm-hmm. Don't get. I guess I would take in my 20s. I would take everything so hard and personally, and just like, which I guess you're prone to do in your 20s. But I would probably try to chill out. It's it certainly seems that nobody's getting it right now, but one day they'll get it.
Yeah.
And you're not alone, because all the heroes that we love, all of them, every last one of them.
Absolutely.
Aretha Franklin had to change labels before she had a lot of money being thrown at her by Columbia Records, who was trying to turn her into something she wasn't. And the moment she jumped label to Atlantic, she became the Aretha that we all know and love.
Right.
So, just be patient. Try not to, and just and probably like. I mean, I guess I would say you could probably be a little more focused on learning, really honing in on jazz vocabulary. Maybe a lot more in my 20s.
Yeah.
I guess I probably could have, but I don't know. But then I may or may not have had the eclectic career that I have now. So I don't know. And so now it's like I'm really focusing in on that aspect of my playing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe just like to try not practice more and just not, maybe just try to not get so down on yourself or down on everybody else.
Absolutely. You know? Lastly, what's next? What's next for CGQ? What's next for CG? What's next? What's on the horizon?
What is next? A few things. A few different opportunities. A couple of really cool tribute concerts, which I can't talk about right now, but some tribute concerts to a couple of really iconic Chicago saxophone players.
Okay.
Or I'll say one in particular. Chicago saxophone player that I'm doing next year that's really forced me to do a deep dive in a couple of catalogs, and just reassess my base of musical knowledge. And
Are you recreating the Ohm album? Are you recreating the Ohm album?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, I won't make you talk about it. All right.
Didn't want to talk about it.
You vibed it pretty hard, so maybe you were trying to deflect.
I didn't want to talk about it.
Okay,
everything comes full circle. Everything, an album that I hate, that I still hate, but maybe I need to.
I'm going to see if I can get Chris Anderson to do Ohm at J-Rock and make sure.
Oh my God!
Sure, you do that.
Right, I would do it. I would do it. But
the easiest album to prep.
Oh my God! It was many. But
so you got some tribute things coming up. CGQ in the studio anytime soon?
I'm trying to write more. We just moved to a new house, and we just got settled into a nice little practice space. So I'm trying to get back into writing and just trying to ingest as much music as I can, so I can figure out which direction I want to take. So yeah, some writing, some really cool performances coming up with the band. We're going to South Bend and Detroit in October,
and New Mexico, right?
And New Mexico. So something that Damien's been working on for a long time. He's been wanting to bring the band to his hometown for a very long time, and it never worked out with budget or schedule. But somehow he hooked up with this performing arts organization that was able to make it so we could go out there and play a couple shows and give some clinics and give some master classes, and it's just going to be a really nice time. So it's good for him because he gets to come home like the local boy made good. Yeah. And
the prodigal son returns.
Yeah. And, we get to play in a state and a market that we've never played at. We never played any farther west than I was pretty much as far west as we've gone. So this is
good.
So that'll be fun, and then just hopefully some recording and some more performances soon. So things are good.
Thank you for taking the time. This has been educational for me. I hope other people have gotten something out of it, and thank you for making the drive, for unpacking the Chris Greene knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you.
And looking forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate
it.
Man.
All right.
Appreciate that.